Hi there, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this wonderful Friday. We happen to be in beautiful Boise, Idaho, the Hilton Garden Inn, and appreciate your interest in this training product that we've been developing. We'll do a short introduction. I'm going to keep everybody on mute for the presentation portion of this. As the Zoom invitation showed, we're going to aim to wrap up the presentation portion of this online in about an hour. We'll leave the live stream running, both the meeting and the live stream for the rest of the day. And for those of you who are local and do have an interest in seeing the equipment hands-on, please send me a text message at the phone number that I'll post in the chat window. I'll also include a link to the YouTube live stream in there, so you can access that. And while I do that, Trevor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Trevor Maynard, and I'm Ryan's partner. So we started working on this project about a year ago. So my background's more on the fire protection, fire science, fire behavior side, a little bit on the aviation side as well. And then we also have Joel Lane here. So Joel, if you want to say hi.
Sure, my name is Joel Lane, and I am with Anchor Flank and Pinch, and we're a company that develops customized training for contractors in wildland firefighting. So tanker companies, air tanker companies, air attack contract companies, and we've been doing that for about 3 years. And this year is our first year that we collaborated with Becker support. Because of COVID and because of distance learning, saw the need to be able to develop training that can be done online and throughout the country at various locations.
Great, thanks guys. We'll jump into the presentation in just a second. I'll get things configured so you can see that. And the link for the YouTube live stream is coming. The live stream will be mirroring the Zoom meeting, and we're using the live stream because the video quality for screen recordings is better in YouTube. It's something that we learned while we were doing training with this tool. So both the Zoom meeting video and the YouTube live stream will be showing the same thing. But when videos of the simulation are playing, you can expect higher quality in the YouTube live stream.
Change it.
Okay. And another thing before we get in too deep, any questions or comments that come up, please post those in the chat, and we'll address those when we finish the presentation. Okay. So, Trevor, do you want to start out with a description?
Yeah, so the training system we're presenting here is called FS3D, and essentially what it is we're trying to create basically a first-person sand table experience. So trying to create something that bridges a gap between sand table, classroom-type training, and then live fire training, both on the aviation side and on the ground side as well. So the video that you're seeing here is actually a screen capture from Ryan and I working in the simulation. And what it is, it's based on virtual reality. So VR, the goggles, which you guys will see pictures of, videos of us using them. VR is kind of a cornerstone of this technology because it puts you in that 3D fire environment. It's all network-based, so we're here in the same room running the simulation right now, but we could be on opposite sides of the country or opposite sides of the world and work with role players all around the entire world. And it's also inexpensive relative to what you might think of traditional maybe flight simulators or these large-scale mission training simulators. This system has been designed to work on consumer-grade hardware that you go and buy at Best Buy. So we're essentially leveraging kind of some of the gaming technologies that are out there now that are accessible for everyone. VR, some flight simulator stuff, and all of that can run on a basic gaming. We're running them on laptops here. So what you're seeing in this video, and Ryan, if you can full screen it, possible. What you're seeing in this video, so this is a fire in Southern California. So you're in the actual environment. So this is the simulator that we're using, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's a 3D open world, so it's got an actual digital elevation mesh for the entire world. And then we're running a fire model inside of the simulation, as you can see, which we'll talk about here in a minute. We can put it anywhere that there's vegetation. We can put a fire. So you're looking at the IC sort of ground-based perspective right now. So that is in virtual reality. So if you were actually in the sim with goggles, you'd be seeing all of this in 3D. What you're seeing here is essentially a 2D view of what the person inside the goggles is seeing. So we've got an IC on the ground, and then we've got an ATGS up flying around in the commander. And what we're doing here is doing some basic target description. So we've got an incident commander working with an air attack, basically doing a fire size up and coming up with some tactics for how to approach this fire. This is a fire kind of in the LA Basin area. So this is an example of two of the roles. We'll go into some other stuff later with tankers and some other roles as well. But this kind of gives you a good flavor of kind of what we're trying to do. Again, it's really trying to bring the sand table into a sort of a first-person, more immersive fire environment.
So just to give more of an explanation to where we think this tool fits in terms of the current training regime, we really see it as Trevor said, a bridge, and it's really a bridge between the imaginative capabilities that trainers have over a sand table, which is a tried and tested method of simulating a response and challenging trainees to act appropriately. The ability to do that without jumping straight to live flight and on-the-job training is what we're aiming to really exploit with this tool. Joel, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, so sand tables have served, a great purpose over the years and still will. There's a lot you can do with the sand table. What this does with being in VR and being able to change either the outcomes of what you want and the objectives to meet an objective is really enhanced. So with sand, you have a pretty much fixed fire unless you're doing multiple tables. And then again, getting back to where we are as far as being out of a brick and mortar building and being able to do this in multiple locations at the same time is really another great attribute for it.
Thanks. Okay, we'll give another example where the complexity of the scenario in the simulator is higher here, but the simulator itself is really doing the same thing that you saw in the first video. As far as the learning points and learning objectives with this, I think you'll be able to see that they're greater, or at least they're quite different in this. So in this scenario, you'll just see an aircraft passing through at the moment, and then just a couple of spots where there's some flashing red text, both in the sky and down near the terrain. And if you have a larger screen, you might be able to make out a little bit of those words. But what this is a reconstruction of a typical fire traffic area with aircraft that are at the expected altitudes, and basically performing the roles that they're expected to. This scenario was created with all of the aircraft following pre-programmed routes. So there were not pilots flying these live. So it can be a static learning tool, or it can just as easily be recreated with role players flying live. So depending on your objective, whether it's to use it more as a PowerPoint type tool where you're explaining the process, or you want to challenge students to actually fit into those roles and perform as they need to be to keep everybody safe and to do the job effectively. You can do both of those with it. Trevor, you have anything else for that?
No, you can go to the next one. Cool. So how the overall program works. So for the individual user, and you'll see here, we're going to hook Joel up here at the end and have him running in VR. So basically, it's as simple as starting a software program on your computer, putting on the goggles. You'll have some basic, if you're flying, you have some basic flight controls. If you're on the ground, there's some different options. But we're running it essentially through a commercial flight simulation software that I mentioned earlier. So that's what gives you your 3D world. We're in this presentation, we're a little aviation centric, and we have been a little aviation centric in this project to this point. But again, this overall program works for air and ground roles as well. A lot of the stuff you're going to see is on the aviation side, because that was where we sort of started our focus with this project. But again, really what it is we're trying to get that immersive fire environment, trying to get into 3D first-person views of different role players managing the same fire. So the way that it works over the network, we sort of have two components. So we've got on the host side, which we're running here in the hotel. You could be running it from anywhere in the world. That's really what the bridge between the fire world and the flight simulator is really what our software is doing. So we are using modeled fires, and so for those of you that are out there might be familiar with the Farsight model that the Forest Service developed over the last, really over the last 30, 40 years. That's what the majority of the F-bands and fire progression analysts are using. We're using a very similar model, so it's based on the Farsight fire model. So what that means is whether you're on the ground or in the air, we're all looking at the same fire, and that fire is going to behave in accordance with the expected principles. So if it gets into heavier fuels, it's going to speed up. If the fire gets into dry wash or other natural barriers, it's going to slow down, die out. When the fire gets to different types of terrain, rates of spread are going to change. So what we're doing is trying to get that fire to where it behaves as expected. And the facilitator can also do things like create spot fires, do wind shifts, which we'll see an example of in a minute. So realistic fire growth modeling is really one of the big pieces of what we're providing with this. The other part of this is suppression modeling. So when you see in some of the example videos, you'll see aircraft dropping retardant on the fire, dropping water. In the simulation, when the role players, so if you've got an air tanker pilot and an air tac working together, figuring out where to put down retardant, when they go and drop that retardant line, obviously you want the fire to respond to that to have a high fidelity simulation. So we're incorporating real world data from aircraft tank systems, drop testing, all the environmental variables that go back into where the pattern lands, how it lands, and to the extent possible, trying to predict the effectiveness of the retardant line. That's all baked into our side of the simulation. The last component, kind of on the fire science or fire behavior side, is a smoke dispersion modeling. So smoke is very important for a lot of reasons, especially when you talk on the aviation side, when you have pilots scouting out drop locations. There may be obviously a great place for a drop that they just can't get to because there's too much smoke. So getting that realistic smoke plume, smoke behavior is a really important part of it. So on the host side of the simulation, that's all the work that's being done, all the number crunching. What that means to the end user, so when Joel is in the simulation flying in the goggles, he's going to see the fire, he's going to see the smoke, he's going to see the other role players, whether it's a dozer cutting mechanical line or whether it's an airplane dropping retardant, he's going to see them. We're all going to see each other at the same time. We're all in live communication. If Joel is flying an air tanker and he does a retardant drop, it's going to send that data back to the host. So it's going to send back where he was, how high he was, how fast he was going, what aircraft he's flying, what coverage level. All that goes back into the sim and crunches those numbers, again, to have the fire respond to the retardant as it should, whether it's retardant, water, or mechanical line. And on the lower right corner there, you see that's actually, that's Joel and I. So that's really the end product of the simulation. So you've got, in this case, we're in the same room. We're both flying the same fire. But we could have been, like I mentioned, we could have been on opposite sides of the world. Okay. So on the fire behavior side, so this is an example Ryan put together of we've got a fire here, and Ryan, if you can pause it for 1 second, because it does move pretty quick. So what you're looking at here is the raw fire perimeter, so just the flames. So we remove the smoke and remove the interior scar, so you can see the flame progression. This is a fire out in the foothills of the Sandia Mountains outside of Albuquerque. And what Ryan is going to show, so this is a sped up kind of time-lapse video of the fire. When it starts, it's got an upslope wind, so the wind is kind of blowing from the lower right corner up to the left. And Ryan's going to throw a wind shift in there that's actually going to shift the winds out of the, it's going to be out of the south. So it's going to shift the fire, and the fire is going to start moving the opposite direction. So Ryan, if you want to play that. So you can see kind of the time-lapse view, the perimeter is advancing. You can see spots, you can see fingers, you can see interior burning. When that wind shift happens, you'll see this is going to be a relatively quick change in fire behavior. I think you're going to, I guess maybe the video is longer than I thought. So he's sending the wind shift right now. He's basically going to make a 90-degree wind shift. And you'll see that left flank will now become the head of the fire, and you're going to start moving along the side of the slope. Similarly, we can do spot fires. So the facilitator who's in control of the simulation, they can throw spot fires in there if they want. They can also, they could make the fire behavior decrease or increase. Again, it is based on a modeled fire, so we're trying to get the fire behavior as it would be expected for the situation that's there, but the facilitator does have control to be able to change certain aspects of the fire behavior as well.
So this is an example of the different aircraft types that are available. Pilots most definitely have been very interested in what aircraft they can use within this tool. This is a part where we have some ability to customize, and we're using off-the-shelf flight simulation software. So we've created some to this point that have the accurate external paint jobs markings, and also have updated some of the cockpits as well. The tool is quite open for us to do that. So as we've found use cases for it, we've added aircraft in there. We also have ground vehicles. So in the effort to make this as realistic as possible and really get the technology out of the way, so that the trainees really do feel like they're in the environment that they are when they're working. We have those tools available. And this is just some of the recording of a number of clips during training, where trainees had successfully negotiated a plan of action with a ground resource, and were executing that. We recorded them from a third-person perspective, so we could review with them, and having the ability in the after-action review phase to see different perspectives, the perspective of the pilot, the perspective of the incident commander, and then an overall perspective is very valuable as well. The communications aspect here is we can't overemphasize that. It is critical, and that's one of the tools that's inherently in here. Joel, do you have any comments about using this type of tool really for that communication part?
Yeah, going all the way back to where you did the fire behavior change for training air attacks, you're kind of limited to how much time you're going to have with that trainee versus what's going on in any given day. And so going back to being able to train enhanced training like this, where it's really difficult sometimes to train to complexity, right? I mean, it's either you wait for that to happen and the trainee has to be there, trainer has to be there, and you have to be in line to do it. As far as the communications, Ryan, that you're talking about, it really gives you not only, you know, 3D virtual view as you fly the fire, but in communications it does as well. You can go back to the ground, from ground back to the air, and everybody can see each other's role that they're playing. That's another huge advantage. You can take somebody on the ground that has never been in aviation, has never been in that right seat of an air tech platform, and now you can put them there, and they can see your world, that what you're dealing with, what you're looking at. There's many things that are assumptions in our line of work. One is that we have the best seat in the house, and why that may be true from a look point, it's not always the case due to smoke, due to environmental conditions. So when you can start sharing those views and start, as Ryan alluded to, having after action reviews after an incident like this, you can then have a much better perspective of meeting that objective, of what that objective was for that outcome.
So let's take a little closer look at the type of equipment that we're currently using and what the possibilities are. The setup as we showed here in the hotel is pretty simple. Took us an hour to set up 3 stations this morning, and they're basically ready to go. As long as you know what you're going to be doing with them, you have your trainees available. That's really all that's required to have this type of immersive experience. The software is software, and it's compatible with many different types of installations. And we've talked with one of the simulator companies out there that goes all the way up to level D certified full motion simulators. And the flight simulation software is compatible with those. They have a real interest in exploiting the networking capability that's built into this software to have trainees that are in those large facilities participating in scenarios where other trainees are using equipment that is this light and portable from around the world. Really doesn't matter as long as you plan your scenario properly. You can use this with any level of sophistication that is available to you. We brought one of these setups to Boise in a Pelican case on the airplane. So gone are the days of $1 million setups with screens all over the place. You don't necessarily need that. We expected that the VR goggles were going to open up new possibilities, but also come with new challenges, particularly with individuals' ability to tolerate the VR experience. Early on in the life of VR, there were reports of a pretty good number of people getting VR sickness, even when typical motion sickness wasn't a problem for those individuals. Now that we've had roughly 50 people using the goggles and no adverse experiences, we think the technology has come far enough along, and the way that this is used in this type of environment those issues are considerably smaller. And even for pilots who have trained in level D simulators and some of the best equipment in the world, they've said the VR goggles are really indispensable to this experience for that immersive quality, especially when they're in an aircraft and really craning around to get a look at the fire while they're maneuvering. So we'll go into a few more examples so that you can get a better idea of how we've used this tool for different objectives.
Yeah, if you want to hit that first one, Ryan, I'll talk about that. So as Ryan mentioned, we've had about 50 air tanker pilots through the training so far, and that was, we provided the system, and then we provided a facilitator like Joel or one of his colleagues to work as an air attack and basically help them go through some scenarios. And what the primary use we've seen for tanker pilots so far, so it is, what you're seeing, it is technically a flight simulator, but it's definitely not a flight training device. So this view that you're in here right now, they are in an RJ-85 air tanker, but they're not using the sim to be proficient or learn to fly the airplane. So the pilots are already certified, well qualified to fly the airplane. They're not going to get any value of it from the flying standpoint. What we're really using it for, again, is a tactical fire trainer. So this example right here, the RJ is in orbit around this fire. This is another fire in the LA Basin based on an actual incident. And what the use cases we've seen so far that have been most useful for tanker pilots are things like fire traffic area management. So for initial air attack tankers, in the rare instance they might be first on scene, they've actually got to manage the FTA. So we've done some scenarios working with Joel and his guys to do scenarios like that where the tanker pilot, IA tanker pilot, has to manage the fire traffic area. Other things that have been reported back to us as being useful tools is for a fire like this, it's in the foothills of the Angeles National Forest. The terrain goes from urban terrain up into the foothills and then gets very, very steep very quickly. So looking at things like entries and exits, you see you've got the smoke obscuration. So what might have been a good entry or exit route is now totally obscured with smoke. So that's been another use. And then fire size-ups as well. So getting tanker pilots to get the opportunity to practice doing size-ups. And my understanding is a lot of times they don't get that practice. So being able to have them just get the chance to do the size-ups, fire traffic management. Anything else, Joel, from the tanker pilot side?
Yeah, and then just be able to do like exactly what you said, the size up, and then be able to actually talk to a role player, an IC on the ground, and as conditions change, or making those changes on the fly during that simulation. So you can take the same fire, you can take the same exact fire, and you can meet multiple objectives just with one crew. So FTA entries, size ups, report on conditions, and then the other thing we did quite a bit of work on was meeting an objective. So what are you looking at? We did everything from this fire time of day, you're only going to get 2 or 3 drops. What's the best use for it? And it worked quite well.
Okay, we'll take another look. We'll take a look at one of the other cases.
Hopefully the hotel
Stand by.
picks up. So this case, so what we're talking about is using a tool as a component of after action review, and we're waiting on the hotel internet, looks like, for YouTube to sync up. But here we're going to see a side-by-side view. This is actually a fire that occurred last Sunday, and the left side view is going to be an actual view from the fires program, which I'll let Ryan and Joel talk about that. But you're going to see 2 different views. Left side is going to be actual view of the actual fire. Right side is going to be a view of the same fire in the sim that we essentially ran the next day. So when you think about this as a potential tool for after action review, being able to go back, have a fire in the same location, be able to kind of retrace your steps a little bit, look at what happened, were there potentially some different strategies or tactics, or go back and review kind of what was done, maybe what could be done differently. So Ryan, if you hit play on the lower left, will it sync up?
There it goes. There we go.
So again, these are just two scrolling views. You'll see it switch to infrared on the left, and we'll kind of switch to a pseudo infrared view on the right. Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about the left side view, the fires program?
Yeah. So the left side view is from a full motion video EOIR gimbal on a King Air that's being operated for the state of California by Orange County Fire Authority under a program named FIRUS. And the advantage for us with the simulator as an example is that it's a tool that is very effective at gathering the information about where the fire is, what's it doing, and where it's going. And as Trevor was describing, the power for us is that we can recreate that in the simulator. So having the ability to quickly react to situations, fires as they develop, and put those into a tool where you can go back and fly it again and fly it differently while that incident is still fresh in your mind is something that we think could have some real value.
And so to add on to that, if this can be done from last week, then it can be done from last year, 5 years ago. You can take a fire that was a problematic fire for you, or maybe a problematic fire for that had a bad outcome, and we have plenty of those, not only on the ground but also in aviation. You can recreate that fire. You can bring it back to life. It's a great way, I think, to do lessons learned, incident within incident. I think it's going to have a substantial, ability to be able to go back and look at what could have been done. And again, lessons learned. How could you have done it better? And that's me included. I have plenty of fires I can go back to where I'd like to have that, be able to redo that and see what my outcome could have been differently.
And the last example we'll pull up here is.
So Joel, I'll let you take this one too.
So this is one of the fires that I would love to go back and do differently. Even though we're looking out of an RJ, pretty much the shared screen or the view that you're seeing was the same. And I was in Bravo 5-2 with Mike Savage. This is the Erskine fire on my home unit, Sequoia National Forest, 2016. And just due to some environmental factors of where this fire was at, time of day, time of year, gave us some really unique challenges, and it upped the complexity tenfold in a very short matter of time. So we had an air attack on scene. I was on scene. We had multiple tankers and helicopters on scene, and everybody was struggling based on what was about to take place here. So on this incident, within a very short period of time, we lost over 200 structures. We had civilian fatalities, and there was a lot of things that happened in the initial attack phases of this fire throughout the day that if you went back, you could recreate it, which we have. We have actual live video of this, as well as embedded in with the simulation. And so it really gives you a great tool, not only to go back to, but also to take a new trainee to train to. And one of those things, like I said, training an air attack to get him or her, into complex situations before they get into complex situations is a really, really hard thing to do until you're doing it. So this is just another avenue, and I think it's a great way to be able to train to these complex situations.
So that's a pretty succinct overview of what the tool does. We need to emphasize that although we have started to use it in live training situations, it's definitely still in development. And there are many things that we're continuing to to improve and to exploit in terms of the capabilities. But we are very interested in working with potential customers to find where the capabilities that we have right now work, and where we have where customers have unique requirements or different requirements that we would need to meet there. We've been awarded a phase 1 SBIR contract to explore using this tool to train MAPS pilots, and the synergy between that and commercial air tankers and ground firefighting, we think is very high. So with that, I think unless I missed anything, anything that we should cover before we wrap it up?
No, if you want to just hit the acknowledgement slide, and then we can roll into a Q&A, and I'll get Joel and I will get going here to make sure you can stream.
With that, we thank you for your time. You are welcome to stay on and view. We will switch on over to live play with the system, and take any comments that come up in the chat window. So both the YouTube live stream and the Zoom meeting will stay active for the rest of the day. Thanks for your time.